Okay, sure, no problem. Kita na ba? Okay, good. Okay, so, okay, we can start. Okay, hi everyone, good evening. Ayan, hi. Ayan, so we're just giving a few more minutes for others to come, maybe a minute or two, so that we can gain more viewers during our live stream. But for those who are planning to come here, thank you very much for giving your time, and I hope that we would learn a lot of things for our discussion for this evening. And yeah, let's give it a minute or two. I hope you would be more than happy on our discussion for tonight, because it's really, really important, not only for the kids, but also for the families. Okay. Okay, while waiting, I would really encourage everyone who are here with us, joining our live stream, to comment down below your questions. I hope that we can answer it later on. I would like to ask Autism Connect to be more patient to us, because our discussion might take a little bit longer, because on our usual experiences, um, our participants usually takes 2 to 3 questions whenever we do our live stream. So yeah, um, thank you very much again, Autism Connect India, for having us here, and for us to have more voice in the lives of children with special needs. Yeah. Ayan. So, hi everyone. Yeah, I think we're gaining a lot of viewers for tonight. Okay, one more minute, and we'll be starting our discussion for this evening. Again, thank you very much for everyone who will be attending our this evening's discussion, and it would really be necessary for us to at least give us a question, a comments, and a share, so that a lot more people or families would get to know more how to handle their children, that would have a lasting impact on their kids. Yeah, we're already on 44 viewers. Oh, 55. Hi everyone. I think majority of our viewers for this evening are Filipinos. Please bear with me. I'll be doing it in English, considering that our host for this evening came all the way from India. Yeah, and so thank you very much for having us in Autism Connect. Okay, another 30 more seconds. Ayan, for everyone, I do apologize. I cannot individually see who are currently watching our live, but I'm really happy that you've rendered some part of your time, like being with us, learning more how to handle your children. And I hope that this evening would be a success, not only for me, but also for the families who are joining us this evening. Okay. Again, our topic for this evening would be making a lasting impact on the kids with special needs. For those who have questions, queries, or even their personal struggles, they can share it through the comment section, and we would be gladly answering some of those questions for tonight's discussion. Ooh, we're getting a lot of viewers for this evening. Thank you very much for coming. We're not yet finished, by the way. We're just starting. Okay. Yan. Maybe we'll wait for 100 viewers. It's already at 85. 91. 92. Oh, 92. Okay. Let's wait a little bit more so that we can gain more people and they won't miss very important notes with our discussion for this evening. Oh, 98. Okay. Okay, so we're already on 104 viewers for our this evening's discussion. And with that being said, we'll be starting our discussion for this evening. So thank you very much again for Autism Connect for having us. By the way, my name is Teacher Richard. As you can see, I'm an occupational therapist for a decade now. I'm also a licensed professional teacher here in the Philippines and also currently practicing as applied behavioral analysis technician. I'm also currently pursuing master's in clinical psychology to deepen my understanding in the human growth and development. Also, constantly pursuing my QBA, which is Qualified Behavioral Analyst certification under the USA. I'm also currently the finance head of Philippine Academy of Occupational Therapists. I'm situated in Central Luzon chapter, owning 4 clinics across the Philippines. And also, I'm really proud to present to you our current endeavor, which is our advocacy for children and families with special needs, which is the Parenting Coach PH, which is now on its what 247,000 followers on Facebook and approximately 80,000 followers on TikTok. And with that, no, for all the 100 plus viewers that we have tonight, thank you very much for your continuous support. We cannot do this without your help, and I really appreciate your efforts and your time whenever we do this kinds of seminars. But with that, no, with that being said, I think we would be jumping right into our discussion for this evening. Our topic for this evening is making a lasting impact on the kids or on the lives of our kids with special needs. So let's dig in. Okay. So our objective for this evening are 3 things. Number one is the function versus the concept theory. Another is understanding positive engagement. And number three is naturalistic independence. So for us to better memorize these things, I made an acronym that pursuing a meaningful life for our children should be fun. So meaning it should be engaging, it should be very encouraging, and at the same time, we should appreciate the process of doing these things for our children. So it needs to be fun. Remember that. Okay? So to start, so what is function and what is concept? So concept is a cognitive aspect of an information. What does it mean? It's how we know the individual information that we gather from the environment, and it's actually the initial phase of our learning. Example, we've thought about information such as, oh, what is this thing? Oh, that's an apple. A is for apple. Though it is really important because it makes the foundation of our future skills and capacities. Meaning, we cannot identify an object as long as we don't know what the concept is. But we need to give emphasis on what it really means. So these are the letters, the colors, the numbers, and even the family names and members that our children are engaging to. And um, whenever we have a hard time understanding what are these concepts, we need to understand that this question: what is this? What is this item? What is this name? What is this certain object that my child is wants to learn? And or get that thing, get that item, get that object. So that's the concept. So it's the initial part of our learning. However, we need to understand, on the other hand, is the function, meaning the application of knowledge. Function equates to how we use or utilize the concepts that we've gathered and using these concepts into a more meaningful outcomes, meaning using this information such as, okay, the apple is what? It's a food. You eat the apple. Oh, that's a color blue. The color of the sky is blue. So what is the function of that certain concept? So why is this really important in the overall development of our children? Because um, for us, for me as a therapist, as an occupational therapist, I need to make the family or the environment understand what is the difference between the two, because sometimes we are a little bit more focused on the concepts rather than the function of the things that our children are learning. So again, the function is the why of things. Why do you need to understand the letters? Why do you need to understand the letter name and sounds? Why do you need to blend two letters at the same time in order for you to make a certain word, and so forth? So again, that is our first topic, which is concept and function. So now, why do we need to know all of these things? So, number one, we often prioritize the academic capacity of the client or our children than the functional capacities of their kids. We need to understand, yes, as a parent, yes, as an educator, yes, as a community, concepts are really important because concepts gives us direction in the educational system in our society. Meaning, um, these concepts, we need to understand that the concepts that our children are learning are somewhat a societal perception on what is the norm. Meaning, uh, the our children needs to go to school, learns how to understand the letters, numbers, shapes, um, and so forth. Um, but we need to understand that children, especially ones with special needs, yes, they do understand, but the more important thing for us to teach is, what is it for? What is this concepts for? Because we tend to prioritize what the numerical concepts that our child needs to learn, than why do I need to learn how to say mommy please? Do you want I'm trying to point out? I need us to understand that the use of knowing all of these concepts is important, but using it in a very functional manner is what is more important than just knowing the concept. Another thing is that critical thinking is more than individually teaching concepts that they don't know or how to apply. Meaning, we need to teach, yes, we need to teach the concepts, but we need to teach our children to think, what are the concepts for? Example, in school, you are teaching the child about numbers. Functionally, you need to teach the child, okay, can you count all of your toys? Or like, okay, you're able to count all of your toys. Oh, do you remember how many toys do you have and how many toys are missing? So that's the concept part, because why? Information is not is important, but how we use those information is much better. So it gives more depth, it gives more emphasis on the function, and it gives more um, idea. It gives the child a more idea, how can I use these concepts to interact with my parents, to settle disputes, or to make my family understand what I'm currently feeling. And next is that we need to provide both avenue for functional application, and at the same time should be given prioritization. So again, giving the emphasis of function more than the concept, we need to understand that prioritizing the function. The child can only learn three things at the same time. So the first thing that you taught your child for this day is, okay, what is this? It's a water bottle or water. The other one is, okay, this is an apple. Okay, and the other one is, oh, this is a food. So what I want us to understand is that yes, we only have three items at hand, but along the way, we need to incorporate the function. Like example, oh, do you want water? Do you want water? Can you say water? If the child was able to respond with a nod, or the child was able to like mimic you or imitate the word water, then that's already a huge success than teaching him a huge number of concepts or information that he won't be able to use in a very functional manner. Another thing, example, you were teaching the child to give something. So the function should always comes first because it is the essence of the knowledge that we are teaching our children, because majority of children with special needs has difficulty interacting with other people. So the fact that the child was able to put his palms up as a form of request is already a huge win for us, even if there's no actual word given during the actual learning process. So, again, we need to give prioritization on the function. Okay? So, next. Okay, next, we also need to understand positive engagement. So, what is positive engagement? We need to understand that sometimes the result is not the goal. Meaning, sorry, I'm doing Filipino right now, no. Meaning the child being able to perform all of this academic task is not our main goal as a parent, educator, or even therapist. Our main goal is for him to understand the process. So let's do a little bit, let's dig it a little bit more deeper. So when we talk about goal, it is the end product of a certain task. Example, I'm asking the child to write his name. So the child was able to write his name. Any task, any skills of effort is not considered as long as the end product is observed. Meaning, example, we want the child to write his name, no? However, along the way, there's a lot of inattention. There's a lot of hand over hand assistance in which you are holding the child's hand while performing the writing task. There's a lot of verbal reminders for the child in order for him to complete the activity. There's a lot of um, assistance, prompts, cues that we tend to do because our main goal is to just finish the activity. This is very prevalent in a school setting, especially for kids with special needs undergoing the school setting, because we are constantly striving for our child to cope up with the demands of the school, like performing all of the assignments, finishing all of the tasks, completing all of the activities in their books, and so forth. But we're forgetting the essence of learning. Meaning, we're forgetting why do they need to undergo all of these tedious activities, not understanding that the main essence of this is actually learning, not compliance just to finish the activity. So that's one of the main difference. So that's for the goal. The end justifies the means, no matter what it means. As long as he was able to finish, as long as the mommy was able to do the assignment, pretending that it was my child's, pretending that it was his child's handwriting, just pretending that it was my child's handwriting, as long as my child's teacher uh, puts a grade of 90 or 85, it's more than enough for me. But the learning doesn't happen on our children. Okay? So performance are geared towards completing the task. So again, no, um, please don't please don't get me wrong. Completing the task is really, really important. It gives the child a sense of accomplishments. It gives the child a sense of motivation that he can actually perform all of these things. It gives us a sense of fulfillment as a parent because our child was able to perform all of these things. However, if we tend to be blindsided by the idea that the goal is the main goal, or the finishing the activity is the main goal, then we're missing the point of learning. Then maybe we are doing the assignments of our children so that they would be given a grade whenever they goes towards another level and there's a task that we weren't able to perform, then we cannot cover up for our children anymore. So I hope we understand this concept, no? Because the process, on the other hand, is a more important thing, especially for our children. So now let's talk about the process. It refers to the performance, how the client achieved the task, and what are the obstacles overcome during the process. Okay, what does it mean? The process, it refers to how the child was able to do the activity. Like example, let's put the handwriting or writing his name as a form of example. Instead of me just trying to make my child finish the task, maybe what I can do is that maybe I can check maybe the reason why he wasn't able to write his name is because he was distracted. So what can I do? I can shift the location, I can adapt the environment, I can change the physical setup. Maybe he's not comfortable doing this table because he knew that whenever we sit on this table, it's for eating. Maybe I can, and so forth. So number one, we can change the environment. Maybe the reason why my child wasn't able to perform the activity is because handwriting in itself is very difficult. Maybe I can adapt in a form of making enlarged handwriting tools using whiteboard instead of pencil, whiteboard marker rather. Or maybe I can like lower the performance or the activity, such as like maybe I can put a whole page as a one letter activity. Like example, I can put letter R and do broken lines. Then after I can do dotted lines. Then after I can do half paper. Then after that I can do um, lines. And after that I can do two letters in this size of paper and so forth. And what I'm trying to point out here is that the process is really important because it hones the capacity, it hones the skill, and it molds the child's performance towards the goal that we wish to achieve. Again, in a school setting or in an academic setting, it's really hard to do because there's a lot of demands, a lot of deadlines, and so forth. But what I always encourage the parents that I handle, or the parent or the children that I have, I always tell their parents that as long as the child do his best during that moment, considering all of these variables, then I'm fine with it. Meaning, if my task is for him to write all of his name from big letter to small letter, but he can only do it in a big letter form, then I'm more than happy with it because I was able to understand that he did his best. I appreciate the process that he was able to write his name without standing, fully focused on the activity rather than just finishing the task. because it's not actually your children's task when you help him do that. It's more of you doing the task for your child. So the problem with that is that sometimes we tend to we tend to teach the children to be dependent on us. So that's the negative goal of like focusing on just finishing the end product. Okay, next. So uh, depending on the priority, but make sure to give emphasis on the effort more than just finishing the task. Just as what okay, just as what I told us about before, um, the process of achieving something, doing your best for something, and rewarding you from doing it with all your best is more important than just finishing it, because there's no difference on that than just doing it on our own as a parent. No, we should have just done it so that we won't be having a hard time finishing it for our children, 'di ba? But our goal as a parent is to have our children knew all of these things, develop the skills, and develop the capacity so that in the future he can actually perform it by his own. Another, competence builds independence, meaning the more that you've let the child do the process, that the difficult process of handwriting, doing things on his own, encouraging, making sure that he is well, not well compensated, but well reinforced towards a point that he was able to do it independently. Isn't it what we wish for our children to have, right? So by doing so, independence would come naturally. The goals that we once wish is now already at hand because we already developed the skills. It wouldn't be though initially it would be really hard, but along the way there's no way for us but to go more and more tasks along the way, and not the number of tasks completed. Again, we give more emphasis on the quality more than the quantity of the task being done. Okay, next, we need to prioritize how to provide a meaningful encouragement and reinforcement to increase probability. So this is the more difficult part of dealing with the process, no? Because it's easier for us to just assist, help, give cues, give reinforcement, do it for our children. Like example, I have a lot of patients that comes to our clinic, and as simple as removing their shoes, even the nonverbal child would just like put up his feet and wait for his parents to remove it for him. Why? Because us parents also have that lack of patience to wait for our child to learn those very menial and simple things for our children. So again, we need to prioritize meaningful encouragements. Giving encouragement doesn't only mean saying, "Oh, very good," or "Hey, I like what you did." It should be intentional. It should be very personalized. Like example, "Hey, um, uh, whenever I give compliments to my child, I would say, Sam, I really appreciate how you finish your activity today. There's no overshooting of lines in your drawing, and I really like what you did, and you're fully focused during the activity." What I'm trying to point out is that encouragement should be very intentional and very personalized, so that the child would know that it's not just a murmur, it's not just a it's not just uh um we termed it in our clinic verbalizations on the child's end, but on our end we're just verbalizing, "Oh, very good," then you go back to your cell phone, right? And lastly, we need reinforcements to increase the probability of that behavior. Example, you knew that your child can only write like what, 5 letters, during our handwriting activity. The moment that your child was able to successfully finish it, the moment that your child was able to successfully completed all of the five additional plus one for scaffolding and for just right challenge aspect, then you would it would be probably right or better for us to give them opportunities to play, interact with them, give them encouragement, not just words. We can also do opportunities to play, opportunities to eat their favorite meal, and so forth. So it's our due diligence to be keen on and strategic on how we use these reinforcements so that I can use it to mold my child into something that I want him or her to be in the future. Okay? And lastly, please, 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 please our portion, but rather promote skills and capacity building. I think this is really challenging for majority of our parents right now, primarily because it's not just because we want our child to be perfect, but because of our fear of ridicule, fear of comparison of our children to other children, the fear of ridicule regarding whether my child is less competent compared to his classmates, or the fear that my child will bottom last of his school honor roll rather than being the first. Again, there's no parent who wish their child being the last. However, it's also your responsibility as a parent to be there whenever they need you the most. Meaning, if your child wasn't able to perform this, we cannot take it against them. Maybe they done their part. Maybe you provided all the reinforcements necessary for them. Maybe you've provided all the skills. However, the skills are not yet there. The skills is still not yet in his possession. So our goal is to do the process, do the encouragement, do the reinforcements again and again, again and again. The moment to a point that we can reach the potential that our child, I'm maximizing his or her potential. So that's the goal for us. Oh, we have 200 viewers for this evening. Thank you very much for attending. No, yeah, sorry, I was distracted. And lastly, but rather promote the skills, try to do capacity building. Meaning, maybe sometimes looking at his weakness is not the most beneficial thing to do, but rather looking at his strengths. Example, majority of our kids, especially kids with special needs, have a natural tendency or a natural inclination for repetitions because that's one of their main diagnostic criteria. Um, Utilizing the repetitions, utilizing the stereotypic behavior, maximizing it, not looking at it in a very negative aspect, would give us a more savory interaction, a more pleasant experience, and a more meaningful encounter. How can we utilize routine building? Like example, you want your child to understand that he needs to write his name every morning. Considering that I know he is very fond of repetitions, we can do after eating in the morning. We need to write one activity. Then after the next this do performing this writing activity, we can go outside and play, do it again and again and again and again, makes the activity or the demands more palatable for the child, more acceptable, and later on you would then realize, okay, so you want to write now, okay, So you really want to write na so that we can go outside already. So it becomes more easier, it becomes more pleasant, it becomes more encouraging for us in the family. So I hope we understand this encouragements, okay? And lastly, wait. Ayan. So, oh, everybody is very excited now for the question. So, please bear with me. I hope we won't be taking a lot of our time, But wait, I'm having a difficulty. Okay. And lastly, naturalistic independence. So, what does this mean? Yes, our goal is independence. Yes. Oh, sorry, it's lagging. Oh, wait a minute. One more. Okay. Yes, our goal is independence. Yes, our goal is for our child to reach their full potential, but we need to understand that it should be natural to them, and it should be very, very person centered. Okay, because sometimes our meaning of independence differs from what our child wants to be in the future. Okay? So again, naturalistic independence means that the independence should be a culmination of the parents' perception of independence, the child's capacity for independence, and the environment's readiness for our children's independence. So the first thing that we need to understand is we need to understand our child's skills. Okay? So getting the idea of child's capacity will give you a realistic demands. So just what I was talking about a while ago about handwriting, it's not prudent for us to just think of the activity and its end goal, which is to finish to have him finish writing his whole name in like 10 minutes, but rather tailor fitting the activity based on his capacity. So how do we do it? Example, maybe you can do it in such a way. Example, you want your child to know how to ask for request. Okay, you want your child to know how to ask for request. The point here is the you want your child to ask for request. So the point here is that um, we need to teach our children the necessary skills before that to happen. Number one, does my child know what it means when you do palms up? Or like, does my child knows how to say, "Mommy, can I have this?" If yes, maybe we can do more demands than that. If the child can actually say, "Mommy, can I have?" So next, after that, we can actually add more words, more words, more words, more words, and so forth. So that's how we use the capacity of our children. Next, we need to make sure that we understand the milestones also so that we can have a realistic goal. Maybe there are patients that we have 3 years old, but they're very fluent in English already. Maybe the milestones already exceeded their milestone or their age capacity. So and it doesn't it's not it's not new. It is happening in our clinics. And and also we need to understand what are the succeeding skills that needs to be learned. Okay, so succeeding skills pertains to what? Okay, after my child understands what this letter means, what would be the next step? Okay, maybe I can try him to understand small letters. Oh, after small letters, oh, maybe I can teach him like letter names. Okay, what's this? Letter A. Okay, after understanding what letter is this, maybe I can teach him, okay, letter sounds. Oh, this is A for A, B for B. Then after that, maybe I can start doing like letter blending. B, A, ba, ba, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth, towards the goal that we wish our child needs to learn. Okay? Next, we need to uncover personal biases. What does it mean? Goal setting should not be based on our expectation and especially the expectation of the society, but the capacity and the reality of the whole family. So sometimes this is the most crucial and the most important aspect whenever we do our parent education or intervention. If there's a personal bias from the family, may it be the grandparents, may it be the mother, may it be the father, may it be like any member of the family, it's really difficult for us to have to achieve this naturalistic independence. Why? Like example, one family member, which is the mother, wants the child to undergo intervention or therapy. However, the father states that, oh, I was like that back then. I wasn't able to talk up until the age of 5. So it's totally fine. So that's what? That's values concern. That's a values bias. So you are basing the development of your child from the values or from the rituals that you have in your family. Or like example, you have you and your husband already knew that your child needs help. However, then a grandparent would come in and like ask you, oh, why do you need to put them to put your child in a therapy intervention? Is your child crazy? Is your child like very unstable or so forth? But no, I cannot have my grandchild to go to undergo those kinds of intervention. So again, it's another bias. So before anything else, we need to uncover all of this bias and do something about it, because it would really impede the function of our children. It would really hamper, not just hamper, it would halt the capacity of our children. So please deal with it first before we wish our children to be good in school. Okay? Before we wish this kind of independence for our child. Okay? Another thing is that we need to understand how unlock our child. So the client is constantly demanded to reach their full potential with the right guidance and performance. Okay, so some professionals or even family gets me wrong about the matter because they think that I'm more into progress driven than a person centered kind of interventionist. That's not the point. My point here is that on the initial phase of the child's development, they don't understand what is right and wrong. They don't understand what is beneficial to them and what is not. So it's our responsibility as a parent and a guardian to mold them, to shape them, to lead them, to encourage them so that they would reach that goal or that potential, that fullness of their potential. However, sometimes, again, going back to our personal biases, we don't understand. We don't understand that by doing all of these things, it would yield a better result. It will yield a better result for our children. So for me, yes, Okay, sorry for that technical glitch. Okay, wait a minute. Okay,
Okay,
let's start.
let's start.
Kailangan ka na mag
Patanggal ako.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, let's start. So going back to our topic, yeah, I think that's one of the most important thing, no? We need to understand the capacities of our children, and we need to maximize it to its full potential. Okay. Now, wait a minute. Hello?
Na-exit siya na.
kunin mo kunin mo yung charger.
Okay. So I think we'll be starting to answer some of our questions. So ayun no. So okay, let's start. Okay. How can we lessen or totally stop awesome kids for balancing with from balancing with their hands? What does it mean? Okay, it's from Sir Eric Edward de los Reyes. So what do we mean by balancing from their hands or maybe hand flapping? So okay, we need to understand that hand flapping in nature is a sensory need, meaning it's a seeking behavior. The child needs it to happen so that the child would feed their needs. So, if you're asking me if can we stop them from flapping their hands, well, we can actually divert it into something more constructive. Like example, maybe we can have them like do heavy work, like carry things or like perform tasks that would utilize both of their hands. We can actually also feed because hand flapping in nature comes from a sensory seeking behavior, particularly the proprioceptive input. Other therapists would also use like weighted blankets whenever the child sleeps or weighted bags for the children to utilize on so that on the daily basis the subsystem of proprioceptive input would be well fed so that the performance would yield its result. The child is able to demand it right there and then. Okay. So, from Sir Jake Francisco, ayan, this is my question na nasa teaching field po. How can school create a classroom environment where students with autism feel safe, understood, and valued, especially in inclusive education? So, this is a very crucial topic, particularly because of our circumstances, especially in a public school. Inclusive education, okay, inclusive education um, was formulated for the purpose of including children with special needs in mainstream education. However, what I want to point out is that teachers are not the sole person that needs to address these problems. It needs to be multiple faceted intervention. Meaning, yes, it's important for the teachers to address this, but we need to understand that we also need to recommend the child to undergo therapy intervention, not just to regulate them, but also to help us as a professional to maximize their full capacity. So
again, on a practical sense, as a teacher, what can we do? Number one, classroom management. We can, in a physical setting, we can like adjust the setup. Maybe you can put the child with special needs on the very front row on the corner slot so that you can better assist them, better aid them for their needs, and make sure to have an IEP at hand so that you would be able to provide reasonable accommodations for the child's well-being. So yeah, for my answer, that's what we can do to help children with special needs in mainstream education. Okay. Okay. So we have another question from Mom Hane Lee. How to calm a child who is throwing tantrums during class because of classmates who aren't listening and can't recite? Oh, this is really challenging. We need to understand the function or the reasons behind. Number one, what is the reason why the child is making a tantrums whenever the classmate isn't able to participate? Is it because he doesn't want the idea that the teacher is waiting and the child is not responding? Is it because um he doesn't like others to answer the question other than him? Or is it because he's being distracted by the noise and the loudness of the group or the class whenever the teacher is discussing? So it has a vague sense, but for me, maybe I'll try to rephrase it. How to calm a child who is throwing tantrums in class? So to answer that question, number one, we need to understand why. Why is the child is throwing tantrums? Is it because of the noise? Maybe he has a sensory issue that has hypersensitivity in the loudness of the room. Maybe we can tone down the demand. Maybe the teacher can do classroom management, perform tasks in silence, or like demand the class. Whoever has the highest voice would be the teacher for tomorrow, or something like that. So we need to identify first what is the reason so that we can give better recommendations. Okay. Next, sorry if I might read it wrong, from Anne. How to teach a child to eye contact? Number one, okay, I'll be as blunt as I can, no? Are you interesting enough for your child to look at you? So if you're not interesting enough, maybe you're not worthy of their eye contact. So I really apologize, but sometimes it happens. But there are situations in which the children really do have difficulty in responding to eye contact. What I usually recommend, or what I usually do, even if the child is I just met the child firsthand, I always ask what is the most important or what is the child's favorite toy. Then whenever I present it, I usually use that going a little bit more towards my mouth and give and associate it to a word, most especially the child's name. Example, Sam, look. Sam, look. It's teacher Sam, look. Up to a point that the child would be responding to me, not because I'm calling his name, but because I'm holding his preferred task. So we are banking on his interest so that we can navigate the language and the concern in eye contact. Then later on, he might associate his name for eye contact along the way. So even if you don't present the toy, but you verbalize his name, he's anticipating that you might be providing him an interesting object or an interesting thing. So that's my recommendation for that. Okay, from Ma'am Lorelaine Balo, Briones. How about nail biting teacher? What are the possible intervention that I can do? Also, what is the possible reason why my son keeps on doing it? Again, a lot of things that our children, especially kids with special needs, are doing isn't explained by reason. But one thing is for sure, if I would, because of the sensory nature of that concern, for them it do make sense. And I always give this analogy. Example, as a parent, I would prevent you. Example, you're you really want to go to the comfort room or bathroom to like what? Urinate or defecate in some for something like that. But I prevented you from doing that just because I don't want you to do it. Would you feel happy? Would you think that I'm being reasonable? So it goes the same way for this children, because sensory needs is a physiologic needs. They need to do this particularly because it is quote unquote needed by their body and their um, so that they can regulate themselves. And also sometimes nail biting is a sign of psychological distress, meaning maybe he's nail biting because he's like stressed or anxious, or he constantly thinks of something but you don't know what it is because he cannot speak, he cannot say what he likes and so forth. So we need to understand first. Again, those are just possibilities. I don't know the kid, I don't see him, but those are the possible reasons. So again, sorry, last what are the things that we what can we do for that? Maybe we can divert it just as what we've talked about a while ago. Maybe you can do like, okay, maybe we can do fidget spinners or like fidget toys and so forth. Yeah, that's how we can do it. Okay, we have one more. Kaj Sanchez. Okay, I'll read it in English. How can okay, I'll read it in Filipino first. Okay, papaano po naman yung anak kong sinasaktan sarili niya at minsan nananakit po? Nag-start po yan bago siya mag 2 years old. Diagnosed po siya ng autism po. He's 3 na po this year, and this year lang din po na-assess. So in English, it says that my child usually hits himself and hits others. It started when he was 2 years old, that he was diagnosed with autism, and he is now 3 and he already had an assessment. Okay. Again, going back, we need to understand the function of the behavior. Why does he do that? Is he doing it out of the fact of 4 things? Number 1, is he doing it out of sensory issue? Are you too close? That's why he doesn't want you to come near to him. That's why he does that hitting behavior. Are you does he feel anxious? That's why he manifests it in a way of hitting you in a sensory aspect. Next, escape. Is it as an escape behavior because you're presenting a task? So that is it presenting a task? That's why he doesn't want to respond to you because he's escaping from that. And next is attention. Does he hit you because he wants to seek attention, or he wants to catch your attention because hitting is the most easiest way for him to do it, to catch your attention and look to him and say no? Or is the child hitting you because of tangibles? Meaning, is he hitting you because he wants to get something from you, which is he's constantly hitting you because he wants to go outside and play? So again, there's a lot of reasons, and I cannot enumerate all of them, but please understand that there's no one major factor. That's why we do assessments. That's why we do intervention, and that's why we do a lot of treatment procedures for our children. And it's not just play. So the fact that the intervention goes way beyond the playing means that there's a lot of things happening in a therapist's brain whenever we perform these kinds of interventions. Okay, and lastly, can we do it at the last? Okay. Okay. Again, with Ma'am Hanely, no, maalis po ba talaga sa Awesome Kid ang pagtitiptoeing? As an OT told me, mag-focus siya, focus siya ialis ang pagtiptoe ng bata. Okay. Number 1, I cannot speak on behalf of my fellow occupational therapist. Why? Especially if they are licensed, they do have their own clinical judgment on how they perform their personalized intervention, especially for your child. So with that being said, I cannot contradict I cannot try to this um try to say that what his targeted skill is not right or wrong. But yes, to answer the first question, can we remove or can we prevent our children from doing tiptoeing? Ah, yes, yes, and sometimes no. But for me, because of the personalized aspect of the tiptoeing, which is again the same as our example a while ago, tiptoeing is also a physiologic needs. That's why they do tiptoe so that they can feel the pressure at the tip of their toes. So it will lessen it what we can do is that we can do interventions such as we can provide sensory inputs, we can do massage, we can do like um fixations such as like having them wear a shoe so that they it would prevent them from doing tiptoe. We can also provide or give them a physical feedback or biofeedback, as we call it, in which we provide that needs by giving them like weighted bags and so forth, or other movement activities that particularly targets proprioceptive inputs such as weight bearing on hands, doing other textures and so forth. So it's really a very diverse problem, and there's a lot of ways for an occupational therapist to address it. Okay. Oh, we have one more. Okay. Sorry. I'm really sorry on our host, but there's a lot of questions for us for this evening. Ma'am Rose Lid Service Centeno. Sorry if I read it wrong. Papaano po maiiwasan yung pananakit sa sarili nila at sa ibang tao? Again, I think it's the same question as a while ago. We need to understand the function of the behavior. Maybe it's a sensory input. Maybe he's having a meltdown. So the difference between meltdown and temper tantrums is that meltdown usually is a sensory overload. They have a lot of sensory inputs happening in their body that makes them like shut down. That's why even if you give everything that you want, that the child wants, he doesn't really respond to it. Temper tantrums, on the other hand, whenever you present the preferred activity, he would later on subside that the behavior later on subsides. Okay. Any tips for potty training? Turning 7, his child is turning 7 but still uses diapers. Please give us some tips if you have. Oh, it's really challenging. Number one is we call it in psychology exposure therapy. So number one that we usually identify for our children, especially for potty training, is that can you identify when is the time the child usually do their like their thing? Because by doing so, by understanding so, we can actually provide a more prudent response. Like example, you know that your child usually defecates at the time of 8 a.m. So what you can do is what you can do is that you can bring the child in the comfort room, like do their thing. You can be with them. You can at least be like assist them. If your child is already 7 years old, I would highly encourage you to have it done together with the same age. Maybe if the child is girl, do it with the mom. If the child is boy, do it with the grandparents. Do it with the dad. Okay, do we have more question? Last question. Okay. And my okay. We have a lot more questions, but please bear with us. We can only accommodate up until 10 questions. I'll do it as much as I can. Okay. Mamia Menvel Ignacio. Okay. How to help a child with skill generalization. He can perform tasks at home and during therapy, but not in school po. Okay, skill generalization. Okay. Okay, for those who doesn't know what skill generalization means is generalization by context is if the child is able to apply certain skills across environment, across different tasks, across different people. So again, so for now, the main concern of the parent is um the child is able to perform this skills in school and also in therapy. Primarily why? Because we are able to focus on our children. Also in therapy, yeah, we're ending in 4 minutes, by the way. In therapy and also in most especially in uh we can focus on our child. However, in school, there's a lot of people. So what we can do is, as a therapist, we can actually give recommendations. How can we help the teacher do the generalization, such as example, if the child doesn't listen to the teacher, maybe we can give a recommendation to the teacher, such as, okay, maybe teacher, you can simplify the demands for him at the school, or maybe you can give a written description of the instructions so that he can read it ahead of time. Maybe he cannot process all of the information at once you give it to him, or maybe you can actually explore other options. Okay. I'm really sorry for our time and for the technical difficulties a while ago, but yeah. um for more helpful tips, please support us. Please support Autism Connect, and also follow us on our TikTok page, which is the Parenting Coach PH, and also our Facebook page, All Dreamcatcher Therapy Center. Do share our videos pertaining to helping kids and their parents care for children with special needs. Yeah. Thank you again for your time, and also for our host this evening, Autism Connect. Thank you for having us. And it was really a privilege for us to be with you and to explore a lot of our avenues to help our children. And yeah, thank you for having us. And also for the viewers, my wife is constantly telling me about my prompts. No, thank you for your time, and I hope to see you on our next engagements. Ayan. Until next time, and good night for everyone. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.